Good evening and welcome to the June meeting of the Committee of Adjustments. Before we begin, I'll ask Ms. Lalonde to read our territorial acknowledgement.
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you. I would like to introduce our committee at this time. To my right is Ms. Lalonde, Ms. Kohler, and Mr. Roth. And with us this evening is Mr. Cameron Miller, a planner with the Township. And my name is Tyler Bowman, the chair of this committee. We are an independent body appointed by Wilmot Township Council. We have the power to make minor adjustment changes to existing zoning regulations and to approve some changes to existing non-conforming uses and to give consent. Each applicant will be notified in writing of the decision made within 10 days. With the decision will be instructions on how it can be appealed. Any decision made by this committee can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, who will then hold a public meeting or hold a meeting and make a final decision. Only the applicant and certain prescribed public agencies can appeal the committee's decision. If the decision on a minor variance is not appealed, it becomes final and binding after 20 days from the date of this meeting. If a decision on consent is not appealed, it becomes final and binding after 20 days from the date the decision is mailed. Tonight, the format of this meeting will be as follows. Mr. Miller will introduce the application. The applicant will be invited to come forward and add any additional information if they choose. Following this, anyone in the audience or online will have the opportunity to speak for or against the application. The committee members may then ask questions of the applicant, and finally, the committee will then make a decision on the application. So to start this meeting, I want to ask, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, I'll invite Mr. Miller here to introduce our first application.
Yes, thank you. The first application is A08/24 minor variance concerning 183 Mill Street in New Hamburg. So this application is proposing to reduce the required rear yard setback requirement from 7.5 meters to approximately 0.3 meters and to also increase the maximum allowable lot coverage of a main building from 50% to approximately 58% to allow for an addition. So the subject property contains a former feed mill. The property was acquired by Love Your Neighbor Communities, acronym being LINK, in late 2021 with the ultimate vision of converting that site into an affordable housing project within the core area of New Hamburg. Through the last several years, Township staff have continued to work with LINK to move through a number of steps to ensure the viability of this development. This includes receiving previous endorsement from Wilmot's Heritage Committee, working through various things with the Grand River Conservation Authority to satisfy their regulations, and most recently, Township Council authorizing parking exemptions and the disposition of surrounding surplus road allowances to also assist in facilitating this project. So again, LINK proposes to repurpose this existing mill building and remove the former police detachment building to facilitate a significant addition to the original structure with some outdoor amenity areas as well. So the conversion and addition are planned to include approximately 3,800 square feet of commercial floor area around, in addition to around 31 rental apartments. And so the apartment units will be a mixture, some market rate affordable, as well as some rent geared to income units. And so Link is essentially, again, seeking a reduction to the rear yard setback requirement and to increase the maximum allowable lot coverage as the final hurdle to facilitating this project. Should this application be approved tonight, it still is subject to a future site plan control process where detailed aspects of the site design would be examined. In circulating the application, staff did not receive any concerns. Staff are of the opinion that these variances are minor in nature and would assist in facilitating a major redevelopment project in the core area of New Hamburg. And again, future development of the site would be subject to that detailed site plan approval process. Staff are recommending that the application be approved tonight.
Thank you. Is the applicant in the audience and interested in speaking, or virtually?
So there are some members of the group here in person tonight, and there's also a member who's present online. So we could first ask if anyone in person would like to speak, and then we can move online after.
It appears that there's not a need, or okay. Online, is there any interest in speaking on this application?
If you would like to speak virtually, you're welcome to use the raise hand function, and I can promote you to a panelist. If not, that's also okay. So we'll just wait one brief second. It appears that they also do not wish to speak.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this application?
There is a virtual attendee who did request to be registered. I would ask that if you're interested in speaking, to also raise your hand, and we can invite you into the meeting virtually here. Okay, and then just one last final call for anyone who would like to speak on this, if you just want to use the raise hand function one last time.
Doesn't appear so. Committee, do we have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Roth?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment with your permission.
Go ahead.
Thank you. To members of the Link executive, some of you of which are here this evening, I want to extend my personal thanks for your vision, for your dedication to this community, and for the forethought and the work that you and all of your supporters are putting into what is really a wonderful project for our community. It's a blessing that we do have people like yourselves in this community who are willing to work so hard to make this a much, much better place. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much, and may God bless your endeavors. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Roth. I echo that. Could I have a motion from the committee to, moved by Mr. Roth?
I will move to approve.
Seconded by Ms. Lalonde. And that motion, or all in favor, sorry? And that motion is carried. Mr. Miller, on to the second application, please.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to minor variance A09/24 concerning 1100 Burletts Road. So this application is proposing to permit up to 13% of one existing accessory building with an area of around 450 square meters to contain an additional dwelling unit detached. So the subject property is mostly a wooded property. It's developed with a single detached dwelling and a large accessory building, which is essentially a drive shed and a shop. The applicant is seeking to convert a very small portion of this building, about 600 square feet, which works out to about 20% of the structure, into an additional dwelling unit detached, which is permitted by the zoning. However, the section of the zoning bylaw speaking to additional dwelling units stipulates that the total lot coverage of the building containing the existing additional dwelling unit cannot exceed 75% of lot coverage of the main dwelling. So as worded, this applies to the entire structure. And so essentially, The wording that's proposed tonight in the recommendation would limit just a small portion of this building being converted into an additional dwelling unit. And again, this equates to only 20% of the lot coverage of the home. So staff feel that it does meet the intent of the regulations, but again, as it's written, it applies to the entire structure. The rear of the property is regulated by the Grand River Conservation Authority. A permit has been issued already by their office for this conversion, and they've commented on this application as well and stated that they have no issues. So in circulating the application, staff also did not receive any concerns and are recommending its approval tonight.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak on behalf of this application?
I would just, to the virtual attendee, if you would like to speak on this application, you can use the raise hand function and then we will add you to the meeting. If not, then you do not need to raise your hand.
Seeing none, is there anyone in the that would like to comment on this application? Seeing no one online? Seeing none. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? And seeing none there, could I get a motion to approve this submission from the committee? Moved by Ms. Lalonde, seconded by Ms. Kohler, all in favor. And that motion is carried. And we have one more for tonight, and Mr. Miller, will you introduce it, please?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to a consent application of the evening, which is B10/24, which is for 1535 Snyders Road East in Petersburg. So this application is proposing to sever approximately 8,000 square meters from 1535 Snyders Road East, which would then be conveyed as a lot addition to 1591 and 1611 Snyders Road East, and to also retain a stormwater easement over the severed parcel in favor of 1535 Snyders Road East. So the committee may recall in April of this year, a certificate of cancellation was issued for 1611 Snyders Road East, which has since then allowed for 1591 Snyders Road East to be added to 1611. And so the owner of 1611 Snyders Road East is, they wish to construct an addition to their building, but it wouldn't be possible at the present moment due to side yard setback requirements. So this lot addition would effectively add to the side yard of 1611 Snyders Road East, and it would allow for this industrial addition to proceed. So the entirety of the lands are regulated by GRCA. They've commented that, at their request, we've included a recommended condition of consent, essentially stating that some outstanding issues be addressed prior to the transfer occurring. So again, we've implemented that as a recommended condition tonight. The subject lands are vacant that are proposed to be added, but they contain a wetland and a stormwater from 1535 currently drains onto it. So this proposed easement would allow for 1535 Snyders Road East to continue to maintain its current stormwater outlet. And like the other application, if this application were to be approved tonight, it would be subject to a future site plan approval process. So details such as lot grading and drainage, overall site design would be looked at through that future process. And circulating the application, staff did not receive any concerns and are recommending approval of the consent.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak on behalf of this application? No? Is there anyone else in the attendance virtually that would like to speak?
Yes, there's a virtual attendee who has raised their hand. I'm just going to promote them here and bring them into the meeting. Just a second.
We'll see them on screen, or you're gonna...
Good evening, committee. My name is Scott Patterson from Patterson Planning Consultants. I represent the property owner of 1535 Snyders Road East. No further comments on the application this evening. I'd like to thank Mr. Miller for his staff report and his presentation. I'm here in full support of the application this evening and here to answer any questions if committee has any.
Thank you. I'll move on to that next item. Does the committee, Mr. Roth?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Patterson. The violation that's currently in front of a GRCA, is that of a serious nature that could, in the end, impact the consent? Or I guess maybe I should ask Mr.
Through you,
Rose.
Mr. Chair, I reached out to Trevor Haywood of the Grand River Conservation Authority yesterday regarding the condition that's being requested to be imposed. It's my understanding that the matters pertaining to the permit and the outstanding violation are working their way through the process. It has to do with the location of a golf cart path, a pathway that supports Rebel Creek. The owner of Rebel Creek is resolving that with the GRCA. Unfortunately, it does involve my client's lands because it's included on my client's lands. But a resolution is in process. I understand permits are imminent to address that. And I have no concerns through my discussions with Mr. Haywood about how that's going to be addressed and that we can clear the condition accordingly.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, could I get a motion from the committee to approve this application? Moved by Mr. Roth, seconded by Ms. Lalonde. Can I get all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We have one more item to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting in May. Could I get a motion to approve these minutes? Moved by Ms. Kohler, seconded by Ms. Lalonde. All in favor? And that is carried. We'll end our meeting for tonight and we'll organize our next one. Thank you.